Hello there and welcome back to another review. So we finally got there, we've got to the end of the Joseph Kyo box set, and I thought I would save the best until last. And when I say best, I probably think this movie, The Old Master, is probably the most bizarre movie in the box set. I think this is one of these films that you've got, if once I get across to you the novelty and the idea of what's going on here, you'd have to see it to sort of believe it. It's one of them films, if you didn't know about, you just wouldn't believe it. So sheer madness, and it's a real oddity, this movie, and it's I think out of all of the movies in the box set, this is just the most bizarre one. It's and the whole notion and novelty of The Old Master, what sets it apart is the idea it has something to do with a certain person called Jackie Chan. Made in 1979, Jackie Chan the year before had huge successes with Snake and Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master. As we know, Joseph Kyo already chose to cash in on this with films like World of Drunken Master that I reviewed previously, which, to be fair, is one of the better films in this box set. Well, I think World of Drunken Master is definitely not as bad as what it could have been, and World of Drunken Master is actually, it's not a bad effort from Joseph Kyo. But what we have here, Joseph Kyo goes one step further. He goes one step further, and here we have Jim-yuen, who is the man responsible for training Jackie Chan at the Peking Opera, along with the likes, of Yuen Bu, Sammo Hung, Yuen Wah, Corey Yuen. So, he's gone one better. He's like, well, I won't just give you, I haven't got Jackie Chan, but I'll go one better. I'll get in the guy that trained Jackie Chan, that give him all the skills he needed to, sort of become the former that he did. This was their Sifu, their master in a leading role. Worth noting as well that, the rip-off and the cash-in motif doesn't stop there. It's well known at this point that Jackie Chan was making a film for Golden Harvest a year later called The Young Master, and it's no coincidence, that Joseph Kyo called this film The Old Master, just to sort of play into that. Jim-yuen had given up teaching at this stage in his life and sort of retired to LA, and this is why the film is set in a modern-day setting as opposed to sort of the traditional sort of based kung fu, environment that we're used to. Jim-yuen was interested in the movie, but was not that interested in flying all the way back home to film it, and that's why the film is set when it is in the modern day, because as I say, he was living in LA anyway, and it's like, right, we want the guy, so he doesn't want to travel, we'll just film it on LA where he is, and then he hasn't got to travel far. Let's face it, I mean, this film, where it is set in LA, there was never going to be short of people wanting to appear in the movie, and this is why it's set. Chloe brought along the strict personnel that it only, with regards to the people behind the camera and on his team, Joseph Kyo only brought along people that he needed, because obviously doing a film in LA for this kind of production was not something that would regularly happen. This was a bit of an odd choice, and he only brought along strict personnel that he needed and recruited the rest out in LA. And as I mentioned just a second ago, that LA was never going to be short of people wanting to appear, all the wannabe actors and actresses and that kind of thing. So he was gonna fill in the cast and the rest of the people in the movie once they arrived there. So we have Jackie Chan's real-life teacher in a movie in LA, right? I mean, the premise, that's what I'm saying about this movie. It is so bizarre. It is so ridiculous, and the sheer madness and oddity of it, that's why it's worth watching this movie, because it's one of them films that I remember when I first discovered it, and I was like, they were, obviously when it come out, I'm sure it's marketed of, Master Jim-yuen, Jackie's teacher, in a leading role, but we'll go through the movie and see how strange and out there this film is. So the film starts with this guy who owes this other guy some money, but he has bet all his money on the horses and lost it. We also learn that he is the owner of a martial arts gym. Straight away, watching this, you're like, well, Joseph Kyo doing... Straight away, the first thing you take from this is Joseph Kyo doing a modern setting sort of kung fu. It just was, as I mentioned, it just wasn't necessarily the thing to do at the time, but him thinking he obviously had an ace in the hole with the master of Jackie Chan, though it was, he thought, I'm sure, that he was onto a surefire hit, or at least that the film might. I think with Joseph Kyo as a filmmaker, like I mentioned before in the previous reviews, that he wasn't ever concerned with doing anything groundbreaking or different. As long as these films made money, that's all he really cared about. So don't get me wrong, this isn't me slagging the film off, and this is, a low-budget low-budget filmmaking done at its very best, this movie. It really, it's 100% about as low-budget of a movie as you will ever get. So if you watch the start of the movie, I swear one of the gangsters is one of the guys from Way of the Dragon who was like hassling the restaurant. If you do see this movie, I'm pretty sure one of the guys at the start of this movie is the one that's like sort of hassling Nora Meow and, you know, Bruce Lee's restaurant in Way of the Dragon. So this guy in debt gets 3 months to repay the money, which surely, I mean, that's loads of time, isn't it, to repay? If you're in debt and you've got owe money and it's like, well, I'll give you 3 months. I mean, that's loads of time. It's got to be enough time. So Jim-yuen gets picked up from the airport, and right away you'll be taken by this funky disco of the time music that gets played. Even in, you know, very much, as I say, very much of the time, and it sort of plays as they're riding along in the car. Even a disco scene in the movie as well. But we'll get to that in a little bit. So you have this groovy disco music as these two drive along. Bearing in mind, neither of the pair of them, or the driver or Wang, are actually talking. It's quite funny if you watch this scene, because you know Joseph Kyo, with all the exterior and the building shots and angles, is like, look where we are. You know, we're in LA, and he's doing so much exterior shots and everything. It's like, yep, that's right, we're in America. So no sooner as he got out of the car, and some thugs start and Wang right away, have a brief fight, then out of nowhere he's in the middle of a freeway and he's trying to find Chinatown. And I think the driver was like a bogus driver or something like that. So he gets to Chinatown, finds the gym he's been looking for, and has brought with him mushrooms, vegetables and medicine. So the master of the gym was like Wang's student, is paying students off so they look good, and his whole plan is to get Wang to have fights, and he will like sort of bet in his favour without him knowing, so he can sort of make money off of him as he's fighting. No sooner of hearing that, and the very next scene, Wang is fighting somebody, right? Joseph Kyo doesn't hang around. The very next scene, he's fighting. He's going to get this guy to fight. He's going to bet without him knowing. Very next scene, Wang is fighting someone with that funky disco music we heard from earlier. You know, is that going to be the main theme of the music? And you do play it a bit throughout. As I say, this film was very much set at a time when the disco era was very much in vogue. Disco was very much at its heights. So yeah, it's set during that period. So it has a few fights. It's amazing how during these fights, like Jim-yuen looks a lot slimmer and nimble and more agile during these fights, and it could be a stunt double. I'm pretty sure it's a stunt double. You know, he's definitely there for the close-ups, Master Jim-yuen, but he, in terms of a lot of the movie, a lot of the fights, it's not actually him. It's obviously, you know, of course, it's a stunt double. As I say, because when it is shot from far, whoever he is, as I say, when you look at Master Jim-yuen, the guy doubling him is a lot slimmer. He looks different. I think he's even like a different height and things like that. He's a lot more nimble. So Kyo has to make sure he gets the Hollywood sign in the background during one of these fights too. So the master of the school, Ding, is making a lot of money off of him. One of the students, Bill, played by Louie, who I think was like a Brooklyn-based, like raised martial artist, sort of overhears this. So during one of the fights, this guy puts pins on the floor, which injures one. Then during the chaos, Bill grabs a chainsaw out of nowhere and just starts swinging it at everyone. As I say, this film is just madness. It's bizarre. It's low budget. It's very sort of disco-y, late 70s. There's just so much going on, and then you think, oh, and it's got Jackie Chan's teacher in it. There's just a real madness and oddity to this movie, and because of that, I think a lot of people quite, wouldn't say enjoy Old Master, but I think they do cut it some slack. So Wang finds out about the betting and disowns his student. I mean, too right. You know, if your student's betting on you, he didn't even tell you. I mean, this student, like, he shouldn't have even been his student anyway. It's this point in the movie that the plot, it just goes nowhere. Like, the plot just goes out of the window. There is no plot at all, and it's done, the whole film is done more sort of for giggles at this point. The plot just doesn't even exist, and the idea is sort of like it turns into kind of like this odd couple film, odd couple vibe. It's almost like the film is just trying to sort of survive on the novelty alone of just having Jackie Chan's teacher in it, and it's just, right, we'll just kill it. That happens, like the betting thing at the start, and then it just turns into this, like I say, just killing time. It doesn't really go anywhere. So Bill gets Wang at the work at the hotel where he works, invites him to come and live with him. Funny when he shows him his workbench, and Wang goes, no wonder you saved me with a chainsaw at one point. These two just hit it off. As I say, they sort of start living together. Bill's like he's quite like, his manager is quite nice. His manager's like, like, I won't charge you. Like, the manager in the hotel gives him work, and where he's staying with Bill's like, I won't charge you rent as long as you teach me some kung fu. So that's not a fair bad trade. So bearing in mind, Jim-yuen in real life was not a kung fu martial artist as such. His whole foundations and methods were very much on the Chinese opera. It wasn't necessarily he was quote unquote like a martial artist or anything like that. So Wang starts teaching him, and when you watch this film, try and keep track of how many hats he has, right? Master Jim-yuen, he's got so many hats that he wears in this movie, and how many times in a different scene he is wearing a different hat. He seems to have a complete plethora. He has so many hats. And it seems he's got a whole arsenal of them. Like, he's got so many. Every time you see him, he's got a different hat on. So start training him, and the training consists of lots of handstands and flips. And why is it these students, they want to learn? And whenever in a kung fu film, they want to learn, right? These students, they're like, please let me be your student. Please let me be your student. I want to learn. And when the training actually begins, they always try and like skip training or get out of it or try and teach it so that, like, the teachers, like, whatever they tell them to do, the student always tries to get out of it in some way. Instead of doing like 20 reps, they only want to do 5 and that kind of thing. Always trying to do it, like, get out of it when the master is looking, which Bill does at one point. So it's all going well. They're earning together, they're living in together, they're training together, and like I say, it's like an odd couple movie. And then when they decide to go to the disco. Again, this movie is just killing time at this stage, and if the disco scene doesn't make you raise an eyebrow, then I don't know what will. They go there. Juan has yet another new hat. Bill and his girlfriend are like having a boogie, and Juan is just sitting in the corner. I mean, he's sitting in the corner just boozing it up. He's completely and utterly just drinking away, and he's like at this disco. And then he has a dance with like Bill's like sort of large female neighbour to a disco version of Popeye, the Sailor Man, no less. And like I say, when they say this film is bizarre, it is really bizarre. It's a real, you just wouldn't believe it. So they dance to this disco version of Popeye the Sailor Man. So the film, as I mentioned, is doing the equivalent at this point of scratching its arse. Basically, it's not going anywhere. There's nothing at stake. There's no real plot to be told. It's just this guy at a disco. That is all that's happening. Nowhere to go with the script, no story, no threat, just some people having a dance, and that's it. Though a fight does break out, which leads to nothing and serves no payoff. Like, there is no end result to it. Like, I thought when watching this was going to be when the film gets going again, but it slows down to an almost grinding halt at the disco. I thought that was like going to be something happen there at the disco. I thought maybe something will happen at the disco. There might be an altercation, but there isn't. You could take the disco scene out of this and it wouldn't change anything. The whole scene, whilst there, it's like, what the hell is going on? It just has nothing to do with the movie. But at the same time, it's probably the scene I remember most from this movie. The disco scene, so figure that one out. So then Bill's neighbour turns up to see Juan the next day, and she's like, have a thing for him, and you'll probably hear the worst ever Elvis Presley rendition in the history of the universe here. Then we catch up with Juan going for a run again, just killing time. He's going to a disco, now he's going for a run. It's just, like I say, it's just scratching its arse, this movie. Then this group of baddies come to see Bill at the hotel. Don't speak or say nothing, so I have no idea what they're there for. Like with the 36 Deadly Stars, it would be nice to know if there was a bit of dialogue there, if they could just inject a bit of dialogue between these villains, these antagonists, just to give us a bit more context, just to give us a bit more in terms of like why they're there. They literally just walk in and they just start, fighting. They just want to have a rumble, basically. So they don't say anything and sort of follow Bill outside, and a fight breaks out. For some reason, Bill has the thing where he has to fight. He has this thing going on, Bill, where he has to sort of fight like a robot for some reason. That's sort of his gimmick in this movie. He just has to sort of like fight like a robot. I do not know why. I will say it's quite cool when he's fighting the last guy on top of the building with the blue sky and the city in the background. It does look quite cool. It does look kind of awesome. Not really a real reason or much context for the fight scene. Juan and Bill actually end up getting sacked as they brought trouble to the hotel. So Juan's ex-student Jim, who made money off him at the start of the movie, is about to be attacked by like a rival school, right? So finally we've got some plot happening. We've got some threat happening there. Bill is like, we have to help him, and Juan is like, I don't think so. He tried to stiff me over and I'm going home. Juan's like, no. And, fair play to him. The students tried to sort of lie and cheat his master. So Juan and Bill, the two best buddies, they've had a massive fallout right at this point. Wang gets attacked as he tries to leave with yet another stand-in. The bad guy turns up at the gym. The students of both schools get into a rumble. Bill turns up to help, then Wang has a change of heart and comes along to help the school too, because he was always not going to just abandon his students. Bill Louie does some pretty fly stuff here with like some padded nunchaku, and it's largely him that does most of the fight scenes. It really does get to shine. You know, he does get to shine and show off quite a lot at the ending with his skills and what he can do. I mean, the film has no plot. It starts with a story, and then it's just basically the novelty of just Master Yu Jim-yuen being a lead, being in LA, and we can just make a film about that. It starts off with something, and then it meanders into nothing, unfortunately, this film. But where, you know, you think there is something in place, then after like 15 minutes it doesn't know what it wants to do with itself. But where a film is done this cheaply, and in a way is so harmless as well, you can't give it that much of a hard time. The film ends with Wang about to fly home, and Bill's like sort of large like neighbour wants to go with him as well. So there we go. I mean, I've got through all the movies in the box set. As I say, I think Old Master is the one that just stands out just for the sheer craziness that it is. But please go and check out all my other reviews for the Joseph Kyo. In terms of best ones from the box set, you're probably looking at Seven Grandmasters, World of Drunken Master, and probably the Bronzeman movies are probably the best ones from the box set. Worst, I think, from the box set, I think you're looking at probably Shaolin Kung Fu, 36 Deadly Styles, obviously. Shaolin Kids is sort of halfway in the middle, and this one is sort of in the middle. I don't think you can really put anywhere, actually, this film, in a way, as the movie in itself is sort of in its own little world, this film. It's just things happening on screen. That's all this film is. It's just things happening on screen. So if you do have this box set, and what films did you like? What were your least favourites? Leave a comment in below, because I'd love to know how you would rank the movies from this box set. But I think in terms of like worst movies from the box set, I think probably, as I mentioned, Shaolin Kung Fu and 36 Deadly Stars may be at the bottom. Shaolin Kids is sort of halfway, but I think Seven Grandmasters, World of Drunken Master, and obviously the Bronzeman movies with Carter Wong are probably the four best movies in this box set. So we've got through them all. I hope you've enjoyed all the Joseph Kyo reviews. As I say, let me know your thoughts on the Old Master. If you've seen Master Yu Jim-yuen, boozing it up in a disco in LA in the late 70s. So thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you soon.
Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all that heavenly glory.